Introduce our next speaker, Mr. John Lear.
Howdy folks, how's everybody doing today? So before we get started today, we have our usual UFO Expo West awards presentations. Today we have 4 categories. The first is the Film Class Award for Journalistic Obfuscation and Malfeasance. This award is presented to that one special journalist who in the past year contributed the most in presenting psychic phenomena in endearingly skeptical or debunker terms by using language so simplistic it would embarrass a freshman high school student. To qualify, one must present a known psychic phenomena in its worst light. We look for abuse or misuse of the English language, and the recipient must be a professional journalist working for a national magazine having more than 57 paid subscriptions. For the Film Class Award for Journalistic Obfuscation and Malfeasance, the envelope please. Vicki Cooper, UFO Magazine, for Volume 8, Number 3, 1993, defining remote viewing as fancy schmancy term for psychic stuff. Let's hear it. You know, occasionally, who here knows which major television entertainer was taken by a U.S. president to an alien cold storage facility? No, okay, well, I don't have to tell that one. But there are a lot of people that don't know what the deal is. Jackie Gleason probably was one of the biggest collectors of UFO memorabilia and stuff like that. Biggest collector ever. As a matter of fact, one of his houses, and he had several in New York, was built in the shape of a flying saucer, and he called it the mothership. He was very good friends and one of the major contributors to Richard Nixon. And they used to play golf together down in Florida. And on occasion, in 1972, 1973, and by the way, this story comes from either his second or third wife, who he was married to then, and then after they got divorced, she wrote a book, and it came from this book. She told the story about what happened. Anyway, he's playing golf with Nixon and talked him into taking him to one of the facilities, which is at Homestead Air Force Base, one of the cold storage facilities for the aliens. And they got in the helicopter and went down there, and we got to see him. Well, he comes home that night. He's, you know, his old life has changed, and he's completely shaken. Walks in the door, and his wife, you know, notices there's something wrong. She says, "What's the matter?" And he says, "You know, my whole life has changed today. Get me, you know, a drink, and I'll tell you what happened." So she gets him a drink, and he tells a story of how he finally talked Nixon into taking him to the alien storage facility at Homestead. There's several of them around. I used to know there's one up in Virginia. And I used to know the 4 or 5 places, but Homestead is where there's one of them. Anyway, there's that was really one of the interesting stories about Gleason. Now we have Category 2, the award for the most pompous UFO researcher 1992. To qualify for the most pompous UFO researcher 1992, you have to believe that only your own opinion counts among 10,000 other UFO researchers. To further qualify for most pompous, you have to bill yourself as a nuclear physicist, even though the closest you have been to a reactor in 30 years is in the backseat of an airliner over 3 Mile Island at 40,000 feet. To qualify for most pompous, you have to believe that if you personally didn't discover a case, it isn't worth investigating. The winner for the most pompous must have a head as wide as his tunnel vision is narrow, and a mind as closed as his ignorance is deep. For the most pompous UFO research in 1992, the envelope, please. Can you guess? Stan Friedman. I hate to criticize, but believe me, Stan wouldn't know a real case if it bit him right square. And they ask him any question, he knows the answer. One little story here, since everybody knew the Jackie Gleason one, you all know the Steven Spielberg one. Steven Spielberg, and this was related by Jimmy Shandero, a good friend of Steven's, was premiering E.T. in the White House in 1982. And they get done with the movie, and he's walking with President Reagan to the dining hall. And Reagan has his arm around Stephen, and he whispers to him, he says, "You know, Stephen, there aren't 6 people in this room who know how true that is." Okay, now, number 3. Award for the sourest grapes to come from France. To qualify for this award, you have to be a present or former French citizen. You have to be an astrophysicist and have starred as yourself in a second-rate science fiction movie. You have to promote the idea that yes, there is a phenomenon, and yes, it's a very big phenomenon, but it doesn't have anything to do with flying saucers or aliens. The winner for this category has to have written at least one book in which he twists the truth, distorts the truth, while at the same time trying to portray himself as an honest seeker of truth and wisdom. The winner of this category will be, in fact, seeking only to spread government disinformation. For the sourest grapes to come from France, may I have the envelope, please? Oh, I can't believe it, our old friend Jacques Delay. Let's hear it for Jacques. I have a little pet peeve I'd like to talk to you about here and share with you. Is my number I keep listed up in Las Vegas, so I'll get calls. People will say, "Oh, John, listen, you know, I've been following your stuff for years and years. Hey, I'm going to be in Las Vegas next week, you know. How about if we get together, you know, and I'll buy a coffee, you know. We'll talk about you buying a coffee." Crying. First of all, I don't like talking about this stuff, you know. Anyway, it bores me to tears, and I'm sure as heck not going to do it for coffee, so I just want to explain what the rates are. It's dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, which includes my wife, and then if I have to talk about this stuff, it's an extra $100 an hour. And now we come to the last category, the Video Journalism Award for the worst representative of the UFO community on national TV while debating the existence of UFOs. In this category, we look for someone who calls himself a UFO researcher and tries really hard to present a plausible explanation, but is intellectually and factually outclassed by his opponent. To qualify for this award, one must be totally and completely embarrass all who believe in UFOs. He should sputter and stammer, stumble and squirm until we are all actually red-faced with embarrassment. For the worst representative of the UFO community on national TV in debate, the envelope, please. Don Ecker, UFO Magazine, for his debate with James Oberg of NASA over the video from STS-48. Don Ecker's intellectual capacity became overtaxed as he exploded, "Ice crystals, my ass!" All my neat stuff is for tomorrow, so I do have one little thing today. It's a video, but actually it's not a video, it's an audio, it's a videotape. Now, a lot of you have heard me talk about, you know, when I met Bob Lazar in the summer of '88. He didn't believe in UFOs, and finally getting him interested, and checking out his contacts at Los Alamos, and yes, maybe it's true, and then finally applying up to EG&G and finally getting to work, and the first time I knew it was December 6, 1988. He came up to my house, and I'm writing out some checks and see him sitting across from me, and he says, "I saw a disc today." And I said, "What?" He said, "I saw a disc today." I said, "Oh my God, you mean you got up to Area 51? He said, "Yeah." I said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Obviously they're either following you or, don't jeopardize your clearance." And he said, "No." He said, "I saw a lot of stuff today." And he said, "If anyone deserves to know the truth, you do." And we sat there for about 3 hours and 47 minutes, and he told me all about what happened. Anyway, I'll go into that story a little more tomorrow. But he worked there for about 4 or 5 months. In March 22nd, 1989, actually 21st, we were sitting over his house, and we were building a little piece of electronic equipment, and he says, they're going to test fly one of the saucers tomorrow. And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, do you want to see it?" And I said, "Yeah, but how?" He said, "Well, I know how we can sneak in up there toward that near Blue Lake, not be on the, the base or anywhere illegal, but we can stand at a place and watch." So he told me, and I knew generally the area because I'd been up there before. So we went up there, drove up in my motorhome with Gene Huff and Tracy, which was Bob's wife, and we pulled into this little place about 8:30, about 8:30, and got out, and I had my Celestron 8 scope, and we had some video equipment. And sure enough, about 15 minutes later, here this thing comes up and it flies around, all for about 8 minutes. And I'm trying to adjust the Celestron scope, which has a 90-degree objective, and everything is up for down and left for right, and I'm going nuts trying to fly this thing, but I finally did get it. And as it started to settle, I, got an absolute first-class view, through an 8-inch telescope of this saucer dish-shaped thing, and it was orange, and it was radiating something off it. And it was just slowly, steadily, dropping behind the mountain. And as it did, I wanted Gene to see it. So I had it set up on one of these giant tripods, and I said, Quick, Gene, look." And as I pulled away like that, I hooked my foot around the tripod and yanked it so that he didn't get to see it. So with all the excitement and everything, naturally, as happens to a lot of people, we didn't get any videotape that week. We did the next week, and that next week was March 29th, and that's the one that George Knapp had on his special, and a lot of people have used, and that has some good tape. But there is some videotape, and I say video, it's really audio tape, that nobody's ever heard before except me and Bob and the guys who did it. And that's what happened immediately after we saw this thing. Now, it's only about 6 minutes, and it's nothing important, it's just kind of fun, it's just us, talking about what happened. And so, it's okay with you, I think I'll share this tape. Now, this is just after we had seen it, go behind the mountains, and these guys are about to kill me, Bob and Bob Lazar and Gene Huff, for hooking my foot around the telescope. And so this is what went on. This is just like that. Right, go ahead, Andy. But there's not going to be anything on the screen except a bright dot, and that's because this thing is sitting on the bumper, and there's a star up there. Turn it up a little. Turn it up, Lauren. were looking at the moon.
We're going to run back in the other thing. Well, I say we wait around. If that was the beginning of the test, they could be back up.
Well,
But then
they would have started
it would be flying on the river. Oh yeah, but they don't know. They could consider it physical over. And yeah, they could still be moving. Right.
have a portion back up to the
Going out. I thought. Why would you have the eating fucking thing?
Yeah, no, wait till the end of the... They're trucking in a UFO on the road.
Well, wouldn't it be great if we saw a big going down the road and they're trucking in?
Yeah,
Like they got food, I'm thinking the same plan.
Did you?
When he pulled up, he said, well, we sent the transmission going to water. He said, get in. And he started going up the hill like he you know.
Did he?
Yeah. He said, I know 200 people on this road like this.
Really?
Yeah. Well, yeah, a couple of years. Special trip that I can find you.
Hey, this looks like that picture in the newspaper, doesn't it now?
I know, it's not
the John Lear by the telescope. This is a historical day, John. You saw it, yes.
I know, but it doesn't make me.
Why? You've never seen one. You complain about it all the time. Yeah, but you saw one. Didn't you say if you could just see one?
He is happy.
This is as happy as he's been. Great, I've been shaking his hand, and all I can do is argue that I knew you guys were there.
Look, I know you were just kind of out here to distance for me.
There's your focus right there.
You're looking at the moon now?
No, he's got the flashlight in the other end. Holy shit. That's what everybody's figuring. You fucking kidding.
Bring it up a little bit.
Yeah, you need to get it bigger.
Let's see.
I think I can see some condos down there. Look at the very left edge. You can smell the craters.
Yeah, it's next to the face. What's that little black thing?
My right eye is ruined now.
So why aren't you any happier? Because you knew they existed. It was.
I knew they existed.
Yeah. Oh, you should.
It was 8:45, by the way, when we saw it.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was 9 o'clock outside?
I know. Well, no, it was 8 something. I bet it was around the same time. It's really strange because they've been testing very early. We're really, really lucky to see it this time. They waited until we got the transmission. Yeah, it's just on. Just in case.
Okay, ready?
Ready for what?
Here's the night John Lear saw his first flying disc.
Wait, hold on. Almost, I'm on maximum gain. I'm going to risk this.
Go for it. Number, give us a side view.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Good evening. This is John Lear, and today is March 22nd, 1989. We're standing just about 8 miles due east of Moon Lake, Nevada, the super government secret test site. And just a few minutes ago, we saw one of the government extraterrestrial UFOs fly over there. We'll watch it for about 7 or 8 minutes. Right here I have my celestron scope. It's 8 inches. And I had it focused in for about 15 seconds and saw for myself that in fact it was a disc. We're going to stay here for another couple hours here to see if we can show you folks an actual extraterrestrial flying saucer beam from
standing on public land. It's completely legal where we are. And if you'd like to come here later in the show, we'll tell you exactly how to get it.
You can mention who's with you, John.
We have Bob Lazar, and we have Jack Lazar, Bob's wife, and we have Jean Hutton. And this exhibition was organized tonight by Bob Lazar, who is a theoretical physicist who works at Greenway.
You want your name on there.
Anyway, that's what it was like that evening, and as it turned out, it wasn't so funny. 2 weeks later, we all got caught. Bob lost his job. They did try to kill him at least twice. Shot the tires out of his car and a bunch of other things. But that's all over now. It's been 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years now. They don't bother him anymore. He doesn't go out and talk too much about what he saw. I do, because it's really interesting. It was the most fascinating period of my life. I'm 50, and I always regretted not being like 25, 30 in the mid-50s when the really neat airplanes were flying, like the Douglas Skyrocket and the Bell X1 and 2, and that's the period I thought I wanted to be in. But boy, I wouldn't trade, what I went through those 2 years, as tough as it was. After he got caught, there was a lot of problems for everybody. But it was really exciting to be on the ground floor, really learning something about what's really happening out there. When I first got into researching UFOs in 1985, 86, I never, ever in my wildest imaginations ever thought I'd get that close. It was just a privilege to be involved in something like that, where we actually penetrated right into the center of what was going on. And people who watch that, they say, well, how do you know that's extraterrestrial? How come it couldn't be ours? Because that's the one that Bob had worked on during the week, and they flew it on Wednesdays at sunset. And that's how he knew how to go out there and look at it. So there's no doubt, that was ours. How does he know it was extraterrestrial? Because the technology was at least 100,000 years in advance of anything we had. Our technology base right now is 30 years ahead of where you guys think it is. They've got such unbelievably fantastic stuff out there. But this, we're talking about, 100,000 years ahead. So that's how I knew it was. Anyway, I just want to tell you another little story about, there's a place up in, these are stories I get to tell when I'm not talking in my presentation, which is tomorrow at 2:30. And we have so much stuff to cover that I'm going to just sit around and talk. But in April, there's, to begin with, just outside of Groom Lake, there's a little hill which is called Whitesides. And it sits way above the terrain, and it just happened to be about 1.5 miles outside of the technical border of Groom Lake. And so we started climbing this about 1.5 years ago, getting spectacular pictures, really neat pictures. The one picture I sold to NBC, a lot of you saw it, where it's the panoramic view of the Groom Lake and the hangars. And since then, other people have been up there. I wasn't first, but we did get some good pictures. It takes about 1 hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes when you get as old and as I am. But about 2 hours and 15 minutes to the very top. And then you can sit there and just watch down in with binoculars. Usually they know you're there. Nothing goes on. Nobody that I know has seen anything of significance while we're up there. As we go through the technology base of the government is about 30 years ahead. We're not sneaking anywhere. They know we're there, and they shut down operations while we are there. But it was just kind of neat to see in there. Anyway, last April, a company in TV company out of Dallas, KFAA, went up there with a friend of mine, Jim Goodall, and they shot some film from the top, stayed all night. And they came down the next morning. For those of you that are familiar, there's a sheriff up there. His name is Doug Lamoureux with Lincoln County, and he was the one that originally caught us up there. He has a heart of gold. He's really a nice guy. But him and Bowman, his deputy, and 2 Wackenhood guys were waiting for this film crew. And they came down. And so they come down, they drive by, and they stop in my room. My wife says, were you guys up on White Sands? And they said, yeah. And the guy that's talking in the car is the head of the film crew from Dallas, a guy named Byron. And Doug says, did you photograph the facility? And Byron says, yeah. And Doug says, well, we'll have to have the film. Why don't you check it out to see if there's any classified material? And Byron says, over my dead body. And Doug says, well, you know, we have to, it's a classified installation, you know, and da-da-da-da. Anyway, it ends up that they wouldn't give him the film, so they took him down to the jail at Alamo. And as they're down at the jail at Alamo, I'm not sure whether the Wackenham guys went there, but a call was made to the Judge Advocate General at Nellis Air Force Base. And the Judge Advocate General told him, the sheriff, in no uncertain terms, you tell those guys that they better turn that film over immediately. And the film guy, Byron, told the general to kiss my ass. As a result, nothing happened. They let him go an hour later. And the basis that they let him go was, first of all, the area is not posted. There is no name for that base. There's no way to contact the general. There's nothing that says you can't shoot there. There's nothing that even says there's a classified facility there. So they got off scot-free. Unfortunately for the rest of us now, there was a sign put there the next morning that spells it out clearly that we cannot shoot photos from White Sands. So anyway, before we wrap this up here, one thing that I usually don't get to talk too much about is the propulsion of the craft that Bob worked on. So if you can bear with me here, I'll have Ron bring this up. This is a little tough to do, but I'll try and do it. It comes in several explanations. A lot of people say, yeah, if you could do that, do that. Let's start. Start right here. I'm going to tell you how these things fly, if I can, in the short time I got, and how they get from place to place. The biggest argument I hear, like the LA Times and Jack Smith, and a lot of those people say, well, the simple reason aliens could be here is it takes too long. Well, in fact, it doesn't take too long. It only takes hours to go hundreds of light years, and here's the way they do it. First of all, space is a fabric. It can be pushed and pulled this way and that way. It's not an empty nothingness that we always thought it was. Although it just has 1 atom of hydrogen per square meter, it is a substance that can be pulled back and forth. Gravity, science doesn't know this yet either, is instantaneous. Gravity reacts on a planet instantaneously throughout the universe to any other planet. The way that we travel these tremendous distances in space is that we generate a field of gravity, and what we do is we can actually pull space. Let's say that this had a gravity generator and could generate untold amounts of gravity out into wherever, a block of space, maybe 100 light years away. What you do is you turn on this gravity generator, and what you're actually doing is pulling space towards you. And when you get it towards you, and it actually enveloped around your craft, you turn off the gravity generator, and you are where you pulled this portion of space from, say 100 light years away. It's a very difficult concept to understand, but in fact that's the way it works. You pull this portion of space towards you, generating these huge amounts of gravity. When it gets towards you, when it gets around you like that, you turn it off, and you are what they say either fused or united or coalesced with that portion of space that you pulled towards you. Don't think of it as snapping back, because you're not traveling in linear distance. It's still true that you cannot travel faster than the speed of light, but by pulling space towards you and coalescing with space, you can travel hundreds of times faster than the speed of light. We're going to show you that in a second. This is just a representation of the fabric of space in your disk, and your disk pulling that fabric of space, enveloping your craft like that, turning it off, and coalescing or fusing or uniting with that space. Okay, let's try it. That's good. This is how they generate the gravity. The antimatter reactor that Bob worked on, incidentally, I'll be showing part of his tape tomorrow, but if any of you that don't have it, there's a 40-minute tape called the Lazar tape that tells exactly how he got into, how he got the job, how he worked up there, what he saw, pictures of, drawings of the craft, where he worked. But his job was to back engineer the propulsion system. And he said it was ridiculous because it was 100,000 years ahead of us, and even though we could understand how it worked, there was no way we could build it. This was a craft. There was 3 levels. The lower level is where the gravity amplifiers were. The middle level here is where the little 3 aliens sat right there. And then up here was a portion that he was not allowed into. Now he said these looked like portholes, but he said he could assure us they weren't. So we don't know what's up there. At any rate, on the middle of the middle floor, right there, is an antimatter reactor about half the size of a basketball. And this is what it looks like here. And what it has is it's powered by a little piece of 115, element 115 on the periodic table of elements. And it's about 2 inches in length. It's machined in the form of a triangle. And what they did, as a matter of fact, we stole some, I say stole, we acquired some when Bob worked up there, and then the government acquired it back. And, but we did have a chance to work with it. But anyway, what it does is it's 233 grams of element 115 it goes right there, and what it does is it generates antimatter. Now the way it generates antimatter is it sits in a little cup right there, and this little tube here uses to focus or shoot protons into the end of the 115. What the shooting the protons into the end of 115 does is it bumps it up to element 116. When it gets to 116 is unstable, 115 is stable. And what happens is 116 instantaneously decays. And when it decays, what it throws off or radiates is antimatter. The antimatter comes down this way and is mixed with gaseous matter. And as you know, when you mix antimatter with antimatter with matter, it creates the most powerful explosion that you should possibly have. You have fission, fusion, and annihilation reaction, which is a 3 type of nuclear combinations you can have. The others are like 1% efficient, and this is 100% efficient, creating antimatter or combining antimatter with matter. What it does is it generates heat right here, which is used to create positive volts for the ship to run. The positive volts are created through what they call a fancy name. It's called a thermionic generator. All that is a fancy name of creating positive voltage from heat. Now the way that they make these gravity waves is while this reaction is going on, I don't have time here to explain about how gravity works, but there's 2 gravity waves, gravity B, gravity A. Gravity B is what holds us on the Earth. Gravity A is what holds atoms around atoms. What happens here is during this reaction, where these little dots are, is the gravity A wave forming or radiating and collecting like an electric static charge. It collects on the top of this antimatter reactor, and what happens here is it's siphoned or channeled and amplified up the waveguide, around the craft, and down to these 3 gravity amplifiers. The gravity amplifiers are what take this gravity A wave and pulls or creates these tremendous attractions that pulls the space, that envelops the craft, that takes you hundreds of light years within a very short time. Now let's get one more. That's it. There can't be anything in between. There can't be a planet or anything like that. And also, what I'm telling you is that it doesn't go 100 light years in one leap. It does it in little leaps, hundreds of little leaps like that. What this is showing here is what the pattern looks like in orange. The gravity A wave comes out here, comes through the gravity amplifiers, and is focused down here. Here, move here. Is focused, envelops a portion of space, pulls it up here, and then when you turn it off, you are actually coalescing or fusing or uniting with matter wherever it is you drew it away from 50 or 100 light years. So the bottom line is when people tell you, well, they can't be here because it would take too long, that's not true. It takes hours of time. So I have about 10 more minutes, or less than that, 5 more minutes, so we'll just answer some questions, and the rest we'll get to tomorrow. Yes?
Can they vary the speed? Did you see UFOs?
I don't know whether they can vary the speed. When you see some of these films that have lights that are kind of stitching across the night sky, I think that's what's occurring here. Do that? Yes, they've used, the question was, have they used any portion of alien technology? The answer is yes. Which portion, I don't know. Yes?
What's the navigational system, and is there
That's what's used? Oh, I don't know what the navigational is part of it. Bob was just involved in the propulsion, and that's all he told me about. Yes?
What contact has the government had with you? Because since they know that you visited the site, what's happened lately?
Nothing. I've been researching since 1985. The government has never told me anything, never bothered me. Maybe taken some stuff, because I've seen stuff missing, but it's nothing you can prove, and they certainly haven't bothered me. And the reason they do that is they don't want to add credibility to anybody. And they don't bother anybody who's just dealing with hearsay. The only people they bother is people who have had a clearance to know this stuff and then talk. Yeah.
What does the government do with this technology? Because if they ever use it outside of hiding it, it's kind of like they have to admit where it came from. So if they can't show it, what good is it?
He's asking what good is the technology the government doesn't use it. I don't know. I don't think you and I are going to be a part of whatever goes on, quite frankly. Yeah.
Who exactly is flying the craft over Area 51? If they're that small, could it be the alien grays that are 4.0?
It's not the alien grays that are flying the government stuff that Bob worked on. It's a Navy pilot, but he never saw the pilot get in. He never saw him get out.
According to Lazar, the chairs and all the
The chairs are extremely small. I don't know whether it'd be a very small Navy pilot or... Yeah.
KGB is selling a lot of the UFO files. Do you have any information on that?
KGB selling their UFO files. No, I've heard about that, but I don't follow that up. I give a couple of lectures a year. People ask me questions, well, what do you think about STS-48 and the Star Wars thing? I said, look, personally, I could care less about that. I had a friend who worked on this stuff. I got to go out on Wednesdays nights and watch what he worked on, during the winged fly, so what am I going to look at lights in the sky? Can somebody tell me how much time we have? Somebody over? 5 minutes?
John.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did Bob Lazar say anything about seeing any weapon systems on any of these craft?
He didn't say anything about weapon system, but he does avoid the subject. His bailiwick was strictly propulsion. It would seem to me he knows something about it, but he never mentioned anything to me. The weaponry, if there is on that 3rd level, and he was not allowed up there.
meeting, and I'd like to know if Mr. Lazar can talk to you about time and space distortion within the spacecraft.
Yes, he talked to me several times about time and space distortion inside the craft. They had to take off their watches when they went into the test site. The reason was not explained, but he can remember going in the craft when the hangar door was open and it faced the west, and he can remember climbing in there and working at least 2 hours. Now, it was in the afternoon, so they saw the position of the sun. He worked inside at least 2 hours doing something with another guy. When he came out, the sun was in the exact identical position. In other words, space-time did not move when he was in the craft. Now, another story I heard to that, but nothing to do with Bob, was an Air Force photographer who was stationed in Honolulu on TDY San Bernardino, was transferred to a facility 2 hours from San Bernardino to photograph the inside of the craft. He was taken down in underground. He was required to put on a smock and booties, was all he had on. He had his camera. He was led into a big hangar. There was a 30-foot diameter craft hanging in a net. There was a ladder which he climbed up in. They told him to take pictures of the inside. It was maximum 30 feet in diameter. When he got into the ladder and climbed in, he said, John, he said, I was so surprised. He said, I couldn't believe it. He said, when I got inside, he said, I could have taken a football and thrown it as far as I could and not hit the side. It was at least 100 yards in diameter on the inside. And he said, I was so surprised. And he said, I caught my breath. And he said, I backed on out of this thing to look and be sure it was 30 feet, and it was. And he said, I put my head back in, it was 300 feet inside. So what the explanation of that is, I don't know. Yes, ma'am? Time and space travel, that's correct.
And what happens then if there's different people bending in different directions on this?
You must know what happens if different people are bending time. I don't know. That knowledge is on the subject. Just a few more questions again.
Yeah, just the truth to rumor that certain people cases House has program with their control cell phones.
He wants to know if certain EDE base have ousted us. I don't know. The only report that we know for sure was the one that Bob read up at the test site when he was being briefed, and that I had read about 2 years before that, was the fact that in 1979, 44 government scientists were killed in an altercation with the aliens. Some say at Dulce. The report he read said it was Area 51, along with a number of Delta Force. That seems to be a fairly consistent story from all the people who have inside knowledge that, yes, the number was 44 scientists, yes, they were killed, yes, it was 1979, but, from there on, the story just kind of changed. Yes, sir?
When you select a point in space to walk forward, is it like grabbing a last 30 or 40 is it then space from your point all the way from where you
I think a more specific point. You pull that point towards you. You don't pull everything around it towards you. Pull that one point towards you. Yes?
I would like to know your personal opinion on the irrefutable evidence of crop circles.
No opinion on crop circles. I don't know anything. Yeah.
Mr. Lazar had his legal problems with the panic charge, and the government had the opportunity to prosecute this man without him providing a possible sentence. There was ample opportunity to discredit him or hurt him, and he got off.
They totally discredited him without, he pled guilty to felony pandering charges. There was a lot of reasons why that happened. I have my own speculation of why he even did it. He's on probation in August. I'm going to try and personally get him apart in front of the governor of Nevada. I don't know all the whys and wherefores of why that happened. But for me, it didn't make any difference because I went through that total period before that of, going to work, watching go to work, and hearing the stories and all that. So there's not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that any of that stuff happened.
What is the one thing you'd like us to know, just based on all your research? If there were one thing you'd like to tell us?
The one thing based on all my research, and everybody says, with all you know, what is the one thing you want to know? And actually, two things. One is I want to have the greenest lawn on my block. And number two, just once in my life before I die, I want to drive into Carl's Jr. order a Carl's Original hamburger and not have him ask me if I want a piece of cheese on it. Order the hamburger. It says 0 time. Thanks, everybody.